welcome back from the break. Now's the time when we talk about Hyrax update. I'm Steve Van Tile. I work at Oregon State University and currently act as the product owner for Hyrax. And, do you want me to introduce you?
Yeah, go
This
ahead.
is Tom Johnson. Hello. He is the technical lead for Hyrax. You may have heard that he just met his 6-month, he passed the probationary period.
I had no
That's
idea.
good. So we're just going to give you an update of the state of Hyrax as it stands now, what's been going on the last year or so. We have 2 computers going here for speaker notes, so it's a little bit weirdsies. So what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about what happened the last year with Hyrax. We're going to dive a little bit deep on what the Hyrax working group has been doing. We're going to talk about Hyrax road mapping. And we're also, you might be surprised to hear, going to talk about how you can help. So with that, let's get down into the guts of the thing. I'd like to open all of these update talks about Hyrax with this choice quote written by Mike Giarlo, who doesn't seem to be here now. To just kind of clarify what are we trying to do with Hyrax. So this goes, the goal of Hyrax is to be an opinionated, though configurable base for both institutional and data repositories and digital collections management repositories. So I think it's important to keep that in mind when we talk about what we're trying to do with Hyrax, and when we think about the roadmap and when you see things going on with Hyrax, why you're seeing what you're seeing and maybe not seeing other things happening.
Okay, so what's happened since last year in Hyrax? We heard a little bit from Mike Giarlo about this just a bit ago. Last year around Connect, we were working feverishly to complete a 2.0 release. That release came out in November of 2017 and included major dashboard overhauls, embargo and lease management UI, several new language translations, improved controlled vocabulary support, and honestly many other advancements over 1.0. In May of 2018, the 2.1 release came out with the collections extensions work, which was frankly an enormous effort that lasted more than a year. Thank you to Lynette Rail and Cornell on the very persistent follow through that was necessary to get that work merged back in to the Hyrax master branch. And also 2.1 shipped with IIIF and universal viewer support out of the box. Since then, as we've heard, there have been 11 releases of Hyrax, all of those coming since July 1 under the tutelage of the Hyrax working group. We're currently on version 2.3.3. It's very likely that you will see more releases this week while we're here, and we'll say more about that in a moment. Also, 2.3 represents a major milestone in closing the accessibility issues that came out of the Accessibility 360 audit. We have also heard that 70% of those are resolved. Some of those issues were closed in the 2.1 and 2.2 release series, but 2.3 represents the end of 2 sprint cycles spent primarily working on those issues. There were about 110 audit-related issues coming out of the Accessibility 360 audit, and right now we're very engaged in the process of figuring out what we can do going forward. So we've been in discussion with partners about developing practices to ensure accessibility on an ongoing basis, and it's really important for us to remember that accessibility is not just a statutory requirement for many of the Hyrax adopters, but that it's also a really crucial part of our responsibility to the public as stewards of knowledge and cultural heritage. So this is something that we're hoping to build into the release process going forward. Also, much of the last year has been given over to discussions and renewed commitments to stability. the post 2.1 era is hopefully one of increased stability and reliability for Hyrax. So we've had ongoing discussions about semantic versioning, and those have yielded a strong commitment to follow the semantic versioning practices, which means that you can expect as adopters a major version bump, as in 2.0 to 3.0, whenever an upgrade requires significant action by you. Please report to us any exceptions to this you find in practice. One of the things that we need to deliver a stable platform is to understand how people are actually using the software. Also, along those lines, we've started to materialize a maintenance policy around the release cycles. And the policy that we're honing in on is that moving forward, we'll maintain the most recent major release series and the previous one. Right now, because of some fuzziness about the releases 2.0 and 2.1, this includes us backporting critical security issues to the 2.0.x branch, but in general, you should expect to be able to have a full major release cycle to catch up and upgrade. We've been able, over the last few months, to backport security releases in keeping with this policy. In addition, we've done a lot of work on polishing up the release process. That's been a huge part of our ability to deliver those 11 releases over the last few months. So the ethos here is we want to have more frequent and smaller releases that make it easier for adopters to update on an ongoing rolling basis. QA is an integral part of the process that we've adopted for day-to-day development, which means that at any given point, we're only about 24 or 36 hours away from being able to cut a release if there's something that's making its way in. There are still improvements that we can make to the release process, and especially around accessibility and documentation and getting those integrated with our ongoing software maintenance. So we're interested in conversations along those lines. Okay, the Hyrax working group. The working group is charged specifically with supporting the core maintenance of Hyrax. So it's taking up the mantle of responsibility for long-term health of the platform and the architecture, ongoing maintenance, and responsiveness to urgent issues. The working group is largely, I would say, responsible for the increased release cadence that we've seen over the last few months. It's been the body that's done most of the accessibility work that we've seen. On the code side, I want to make sure to acknowledge the many, many people who have done work on triaging the accessibility issues that came in through this 360 report. And again, we've been able to backport security releases through this process. The goal is really for this group to be able to provide a stable base of support. You can think of the working group as kind of the beating heart of the maintenance of Hyrax, and stakeholder institutions, if you'll allow me to stretch the metaphor, are still sort of like the rest of the body. And the ongoing development and our ability to deliver on the roadmap really depends on commitments to community development efforts still. So please don't take the existence of the working group as an opportunity to kind of step back from the important work in working groups, community sprints, code review processes, and ad hoc contributions of all kinds. Our hope is really that the working group represents, the stability provided by the working group represents an opening of Hyrax to contributions. So we'd like to see adopters and people working on applications pushing contributions back towards the platform more eagerly, and both by stabilizing the release process and making it easier for you to stay up to date, and by having a group of people who are consistently embedded in the code base to help you figure out how to get your contributions integrated back into Hyrax. We expect that to be easier for you. We want to hear from you about how we can make that process easier and more attractive to you as people responsible for maintaining Hyrax applications. The working group is resourced as an agile team, so the product owner and the technical lead are on the working group. We have a facilitator and project manager, QA specialist. Initially, we had 3 back-end developers staffed at halftime and a UI UX developer also staffed at halftime. We've structured the work of the group in 2-week sprints. Since the core developers are staffed at halftime, we're able to do 2-week on, 2-week off sprint cycles, which gives us a little bit of space for planning and also ensures that when the FTE that's working on Hyrax is actually working on it, that they're able to focus. So we're currently in the middle of sprint 4. The first sprint started on July 2nd, I suppose. And we're looking to recharter in January for the first half of 2019. So this is an ask to you all to consider whether you have development resources or expertise that you can offer for that cycle running from January through June. Additionally, we have a vacancy now due to a change in institutional situation for one of our backend developers. So we're also putting out an ask in general for anybody who might be able to provide somebody at around half FTE through the end of the year to fill that role. And we would bring that person on at the start of whatever sprint follows their commitment. The membership of the group is on the wiki. And I think you're now road mapping.
So just to extend Tom's metaphor, I suspect I might be the spleen of the Hyrax, which is to suggest that people generally don't know what I do, but it seems like I might be useful in some way. This picture is not photoshopped. So last year, Mike and I presented a roadmap, and we had a number of roadmap conversations for Hyrax at Connect and subsequently, and presented a number of things that we felt the community was asking for in Hyrax, and a number of things that the community was asking itself to do to improve things like Hyrax. So I want to focus right now on what's been left on the road at this point. So we've done a number of things that Tom covered over the last year. The major feature development pieces that are left on the roadmap right now are overhauling analytics, work that was started last year and we need to restart. Bulk round tripping of data in Hyrax, the Valkyrization, that's a really hard word to say, of Hyrax, and accessibility. We still have some accessibility issues to take care of, and as Tom mentioned, thinking about how to build accessibility concerns into our day-to-day work is something that we maybe need to codify a little bit. Thanks to the Samvera Interest Group for advising the Hyrax roadmap, which we'll talk about on this slide and later, and specifically to Lynette Rail. We have a new version of the roadmap that's up on the wiki and linked here that allows for kind of a better visualization of the status of elements of the roadmap and who to talk to if you're interested in participating in those elements. So take a look at that when you have a moment. That's also linked from this cigar wiki page. And for this week, discussions about the roadmap are happening at 2 formal times. One today during the 12:30-ish, I think it is, breakout session. The Hyrax working group is going to have a conversation that's open to everyone. Please come to talk about to to talk about proposals for how to move forward with Valkyrizing Hyrax. We'd like to come out of Connect with a plan in place, or at least the skeleton of a plan in place for moving forward on that work, which I know a lot of people are waiting for. Cigar is also, Cigar's the advisory group for Hyrax Roadmap, open group. We're having a discussion about the current roadmap, future roadmaps, and kind of where things stand right now tomorrow at the same time slot. So please come to that if you're interested in discussing. So how can you help, right? We can't do this alone. It's not me and Tom. It's not just the working group. It's a community effort. So there are a few things that we want to highlight as ways to help. Do you want to talk about code review?
Yeah, I can. So one of the issues that we've seen is contributions sitting in PR form for some period of time. My sense is that a lot of developers in the community are a little bit intimidated about the code review process, both as contributors submitting pull requests and as potential reviewers. And I really want to encourage you to step forward and review. If you feel like you don't have the expertise to review a pull request, that makes you a really great candidate to review that pull request. Having eyes on it that might need to come and understand it later, but don't have a background in the particular work that's happening now is an important part of increasing code quality. So if you have cycles to offer reviews, they can be brief. Please feel free to jump in. We really need your help.
Another major way that you can help is through contribution of time and resources. So we've been asked to and intend to put a call out, a single call out to the community in the next few weeks, asking for developer and other resources for Hyrax work that we just talked about on the roadmap that we expect to happen over the next 6 to 9 months. So that should give people a little bit of lead time to identify resources they may have to contribute and kind of give you one chunk of information about what that ask is so that we're not repeatedly coming back to you and asking for more like Oliver Twist. The other thing I want to mention is that Cigar, this advisory group for the Hyrax roadmap, is an open group, right? So there are regular people on that call. And there's a slide at the end that can link you to the wiki page for Cigar and other resources. But there are regular people on that call, but we really want people to come to those calls to talk to us about what's going on with Hyrax, what's not working, what they would like to see happen in the future. I want to stress again that that's an open group and we want you there to talk to us about your priorities for this thing. So sort of in closing, I want to put this back up because I think it's really important to remember this. We're trying to cover a lot of bases. We're trying to provide Hyrax as a starting point for a lot of types of repositories. And so if you're not seeing yourself in Hyrax or in the Hyrax roadmap, we definitely want to hear from you this week and into the future. There are lots of ways to talk to us. There are lots of ways to talk to other Hyrax users. There are lots of ways to just generally be Hyraxy. So we'd like you to engage with us as much as you care to. And I think with that we can maybe take questions if there's.
Are we out of time?
If there's time, are we out of time? Nobody cares. Let's take questions. I think we have like 5 minutes or something. We have 9 minutes.
That's great.
Let's say 5 minutes.
So I was just wondering about a clarification on your timeline, your call for help. So you said you were putting out a call for help for the next 6 to 9 months. You also mentioned needing help now for the next several months and then rechartering in January? What's the order of precedence?
There's a lot of stuff flying around. So we're missing someone from the Hyrax working group, which is chartered through the end of this calendar year. And so essentially right now we're looking for a person to act as a developer on the Hyrax working group. In the next, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to put out a call for needed resources over the next 6 to 9 months, looking at the things on the roadmap that we need to work on together. So in the next few weeks, expect to see that call come out for folks to look at. And then last, the Hyrax working group, the current charter for the working group ends at the end of this calendar year, so we're going to re-charter, which means we need to repopulate that group starting in January, so January through June. And I expect that we'll just fold the ask for that recharter of the working group into that kind of big block of ask that we'll put out there in the next few weeks. So I hopefully that clarifies.
Yeah, we're gonna fold that in, but we're putting that larger ask out there now because it represents a larger commitment that it may take more time for y'all to be able to respond to. We did hear some feedback that one of the things that maybe hasn't been going well is that calls for participation have come out kind of in a punctuated way. So the one organized ask is an effort to reduce that kind of like trickle of information so that you can really prioritize what your institutions want to be spending your energy on.
We have a question up here.
Hi, thank you, that was great. I also want to say thanks for your commitment to fixing accessibility issues. That's awesome. At Penn State, we're very focused on that with our development, and I wanted to know, to what end have you ensured that the things that you fixed in Hyrax now don't creep back in? Because one of the problems we have is at Penn State is like automated testing with accessibility. We don't know how to do that, and maybe you've explored that. Are you willing to explore it? Maybe that's an area for collaboration.
Yeah, we are willing to explore that and have had some conversations at the partner meeting already about what it would look like to continue to both periodically test for accessibility in the way that we did with the audit, although maybe taking a different route, and also communicate to this community what it looks like to continue doing good accessibility work moving forward. And I think we may call on you all who've been thinking about these things long and hard to help us formulate what that community standard looks like. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's very right, and it's the challenge that we face right now, as I think you've called out aptly, is that we don't have a mechanism for understanding quickly that code that's just been integrated might be an accessibility issue. So figuring out how to make that a normal part of our integration process is really the goal, and we're looking at various options for that.
There's one more question up here.
I noticed that the working group, like times and stuff, are not in Sessionizer. Is there a room set aside and scheduling and stuff for that yet?
Yeah, it's on the wiki, says Brian. It's at 11:40. The room is 1140, but the time is 12:1230. I hope that's confusing.
Thanks.
Yeah. Is there maybe one more? Oh.
So I know when we talked about this contribution needs for Hyrax yesterday, we also got into a discussion. You had offered that even if we had people that were very junior, that they could still work out on the project, but I would think you would need like senior people, but take that junior level person on as kind of an addition to what you had up on the screen.
Right. So we've been talking about this concept of having a core group of people working on a thing I think, since before I got here. But one of the ways we've been having that conversation is thinking about that core team, not only as a support team for whatever the solution bundle is, but also as a way to bring more people into that, I don't know what the right way to put it is, but that sort of like more experienced body of developers in the community, which then has a cascading effect of, you know, helping with code review and all these other things. So in some idealized world, that working group would be populated with a mixture of really experienced developers in these technologies and newer people. So yeah, we are looking for anyone who at any different level of experience, and then we'll just kind of tune the working group.
Yeah, so the situation we're in, and there may be other universities that are sharing, we're in the process of filling one of our vacancies to work on Samvera-based applications, and the person comes in with really strong experience developing applications and also doing UI, but doesn't know Rails and Ruby, and is kind of translating what he has in-depth skill in over to what that means in Rails and Ruby. So I think we would like to jumpstart him, and I don't think like one of the camps is necessarily going to hit the right mark, but he's not going to be able to hit the ground and do everything you need, and I don't want him to slow you down.
Yeah, so there's a balance to strike there, but we'd be happy to talk to any institution who has people who are you know, able to contribute time, so that we can make sure that kind of the people who are participating are getting something out of this, but also that the community is getting things out in a timely manner. So we'd be happy to talk.
Yeah, I do think that participation in the working group could be an opportunity for people to bring new developers on board in exactly the way that you've described, especially for institutions that might not have standing senior development resources. Like working half-time in the context of the team is potentially a big boost. And I would just want to add to that we don't want it to become exclusively a group that tries to do that, because then that just puts more work on Steve and I to try and onboard those people. I think we had one more question and one more minute.
Yeah, you were saying that, okay, in bringing in a more junior person to do the reviews, will that person be doing also the approval and merge, or is there a process by which PRs are is there like more than one person who you would need to approve and merge that code?
The standing process loosely is that people provide a review and then kind of let the PR sit there for a minute. And if we had a lot of people reviewing, then I'd be happy to see multiple reviews per PR. And if we could get to the point where we could reliably expect that, I might even make that a requirement on the master branch that multiple reviews happen. But yeah, I think that's very dependent on what we see in response to this call. Did we have time for one more?
There's just a request for clarification coming through Slack about the working groups, the Hyrax working groups specifically, whether there's a requirement to be a partner institution to participate in those. So I was just hoping you could clarify that.
Absolutely not.
Thanks.
Development resources are welcome from everybody.
Not me.
Not Steve. Oh yeah, the roadmap working group as well, right?
Right.
You want to say that?
Cigar.
Yeah.
The roadmap, the people being on Cigar is not contingent upon partnership. We want to see everybody in the community involved if we can. So I think that's all the time we have for questions. I'll be flying out in 15, 20 minutes, so you won't be able to see me the rest. No, we'll be around all week, so we'd be happy to talk more. Thanks.